Hello to our attendees that are coming on board. Welcome. Just going to give a couple more minutes and let folks join. I've got 2:03. I'm just going to give it maybe another minute or so, see who else may be joining, and then we can get started. All right, so we've got a group that has joined us. Welcome to everyone. My name is Kate Harfey. I am a medical science liaison with GRAIL. GRAIL offers the Galleri multi-cancer early detection test. We do work with a lot of firefighter groups across the country, and so today we're going to talk a little bit about what the Galleri test is, how it performs. We'll share a little bit of our actual experience working with firefighter groups, and then we have a very special guest that we will meet once I'm finished giving that overview. Kevin McFarland is going to very generously share his personal experience with Galleri screening as a firefighter with all of you. So thank you again for joining us. Okay, so starting off with just the recognition that cancer is an enormous public health issue. It is a leading cause of death. It is poised to become the leading cause of death, surpassing cardiovascular disease in the relatively near future. We know that almost half of all men will receive a cancer diagnosis within their lifetime, and about a third of women, and ultimately about 1 in 5 people will die from cancer. So age far and away is the highest risk factor for cancer. We see that the chance of getting a cancer diagnosis does start to increase quite rapidly over the age of 50. So we know that the 50 and over group is about 13 times as likely to have cancer as individuals who are under the age of 50. But of course, beyond age, there are many different risks that can be added that can increase a person's chance of getting cancer. And we know that's true for firefighters. So we know that there are risks associated with years in service. How long has somebody been a firefighter? Were they full-time? Were they part-time? What exactly was their role within the service? And then there are other factors that kind of um, may be at increased risk within the firefighter population, such as increased body mass index and lifestyle factors such as smoking. So there's a very long list of potentially carcinogenic, known carcinogenic chemicals that firefighters may be exposed to that increases their risk over time. It's important to note that we have not specifically studied performance of Galleri with respect to these carcinogens, but of course we've studied Galleri with respect to cancer, so we'll be sharing some of that information. We know as a result of likely of these exposures that firefighters have an increased risk not only of being diagnosed with cancer, but also of dying from cancer. And cancer is one of the leading causes of death for firefighters within the US. So, of course, we know the key to better outcomes for cancer is early detection. We know that if a cancer is diagnosed when it is advanced, when it is a late stage cancer, the chance of surviving 5 years is only about 20%, or only about 1 in 5 individuals. However, if that cancer can be identified early when it is still localized, the 5 year survival is almost 90%. So, early detection is the goal and is the key for better outcomes in many cases. And that is exactly why we have established cancer screening programs with population-wide recommendations for 5 cancers. So we have A and B recommendations, that is, they apply to everyone in the population that meets certain criteria for colorectal cancer, for breast cancer, cervical cancer, then lung cancer, if they meet a certain smoking history. And then we have a lesser recommendation for PSA screening for prostate cancer, where that is conducted more on an individual case-by-case basis. But we know that all of our established guideline recommended screening programs still only account for cancers that cause about 30% of cancer-related death. So the great majority of cancer-related death is due to cancers that we do not currently have screening recommendations for. If we don't have routine screening, we have less opportunity for early detection. And that is where a test like Galleri comes into play. It now offers an opportunity for earlier detection of many of these cancers. So the way the Galleri test works, we are looking at blood, and we are specifically looking at small fragments of DNA called cell-free DNA that are floating free in the blood. These fragments are shed into the bloodstream when a cell dies, and it happens with healthy tissue all the time, but it may also happen if there is cancer present. And our test is designed in a way that allows it to differentiate between cell-free DNA that comes from healthy tissue and cell-free DNA that comes from cancer tissue. So if there is DNA coming from cancer in the blood, the Galleri test is designed to detect that. So this test was developed and has been studied in an enormous clinical development, clinical research program. There were early studies conducted primarily in the lab that were used to develop the study, develop our assay, as well as determine some of our key performance metrics, such as test sensitivity. Those early studies were all done with known cancer samples so that we had a source of truth for every sample. We could calculate those metrics. But really importantly, it's critical to continue to study a test in the intended use population. So what does this test look like when it is taken into truly a screening population? What are the outcomes? What is the performance? What does that implementation look like? What is that experience? And so Grail has conducted those types of studies, and I'm going to share some of that data with you. So we have our Pathfinder, original prospective study in the intended use population, and then recently data from a much larger version, Pathfinder 2, where we looked at about 25,000 adults in a screening setting. And then we do have a randomized control study of Galleri coming, data from that coming around the middle of next year. So what we have learned from this enormous body of research with over 380,000 research participants is that when you look at a group of 12 of our most deadly cancers, this group causes about 2/3 of all cancer-related death. Galleri, in our case-controlled clinical validation study, detected 76% of those very deadly cancers. Overall sensitivity, including more than 50 kinds of cancers across all stages, was over 50% for those cancers. In our Pathfinder 2 study, that prospective study in adults 50 and over, the false positive rate was 0.5%, or only about 1 in 250 people screened. And that is quite a bit lower than the false positive rates we see with our single cancer screens, which are often over 10% per screen. So this is not a test that is going to contribute to a lot of unnecessary diagnostic evaluation. In that same study, Pathfinder 2, the likelihood that a person that received a positive result actually received a cancer diagnosis was 61.6%. We call that the positive predictive value. What's the likelihood that an individual with a positive screen result will actually be diagnosed with cancer? And we know that a really critical part of the Galleri test is that with every positive result includes information about the most likely tissue or organ that's affected with cancer. And that allows a focused and efficient diagnostic evaluation. And that information is over 93% accurate. Right. So looking at the Pathfinder 2 study, this was conducted with a 12-month follow-up. Every participant's cancer status was assessed at the 12-month period, and there were a total of 329 cancers detected. Some of those cancers were detected by clinical means. The patients became symptomatic. Some of those cancers were detected by screening methodologies. If we consider the USPSTF A and B level screening recommendations, so that is colorectal, breast, cervical, and lung, there were a total of 20 of those cancers detected by screening in the study. There were 133 cancers detected by the Galleri test. When you combine that, you can see that the yield of the total number of cancers detected by a screening method went up to 7-fold with the inclusion of the Galleri test. Prostate cancer is a screenable cancer. Again, it's got those individual case-by-case recommendations. There were 47 prostate cancers that were detected by PSA screening in the study. When we include those among the guidelines recommended screen cancers, that's a total of 67. In this case, adding Galleri led to a 3-fold increase in screen detected cancers. And very importantly, more than half of the cancers that were detected by the Galleri test were early stage. 53.5% were stages 1 and 2. If we include stage 3, still a relatively localized cancer, that was 69.3% of all cancers detected by Galleri. On the right, you can see the list of early stage cancers that were detected. That includes 14 head and neck cancers, 10 liver cancers. There were 4 early stage pancreatic cancers, as well as a mix of other cancers, including some that are currently covered by guidelines. So since Galleri launched in 2021, we have worked with a large number of firefighter organizations. We have over 160 fire departments that have worked with us in order to offer Galleri screening to their members. And so I'm going to share some of that experience with you today. So as of the beginning of August of this year, we had screened over 32,000 firefighters with Galleri. What we found is that the likelihood of receiving a positive result was dependent to some extent on age, and that's, of course, true of the general population. We saw that for those who were under 50 years of age, we saw about 1.5 in 1,000 individuals screened received a positive result. That went up to 4 per thousand in the 50 to 64 age range. And then for those who were over 65, that was 15 per thousand. Again, I mentioned that part of the test result is a prediction about the most likely tissue or organ that's affected. We call that the cancer signal origin. And what you see here is the distribution of those reported cancer signal origins for the 93 individuals that had received a positive or cancer signal detected result. The majority of those were male, of course, and that's consistent with the firefighter population in general. We see that of the cancer signal origins, hematopoietic and lymphoid was the most common. Again, that is true of the general population as well. But we see next in line was head and neck cancer, as well as lung, bone and soft tissue, which would be sarcomas, and also colorectal quite elevated, and then a smattering of others as well. We always try to follow up and learn what the outcomes are of any of our positive results. We don't always get that information back. It is a voluntary reporting process. But I can tell you that as of beginning of August, we know of 25 firefighters that were confirmed to have cancer, identified as a result of their Galleri screening. And so that is the segue, that is a transition into our very special guest, Kevin McFarland. Kevin is one of those firefighters whose cancer was detected by Galleri screening, and he has very generously agreed to join us and share his experience with us today. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi.
Hi, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
So perhaps maybe you could just start and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career in fire service.
Yeah. My name's Kevin McFarland. Worked for the Violet Township Fire Department just east of Columbus, Ohio, in Pickerington, Ohio. Kind of been on this east side of Columbus my whole career. Started volunteering back in 1995 and got full-time in 99. So 26 years full-time, 30 years total fire service experience. Had a great career, was able to do a lot of things and stuff that rescue schools, any kind of schooling that I wanted to go to, we were able to go to. And then I got into the instructional side and that on my own, where I was able to travel the country and teach throughout the country towards the latter part of my career. Was relatively busy department, and between that teaching and everything, I really enjoyed every aspect of the job. And looking back on it now, was just very lucky to have that kind of career and be involved with a lot of changes. And things have changed a lot since I started. We were still, when I first started, if you could breathe, you might not wear your mask as much as you do now. And we're telling everybody, wear your mask, keep it on. So I was towards the tail end of some things with a lot of changes with technology and turnout gear and some of the stuff that's provided for us for our health.
Sure. Thank you for so many years of service. So, would you say that you were a healthy guy? Did you have an awareness? Were you thinking about risk of cancer at all?
I knew it had been out there from different classes I'd been to. I'd done some work with the Fallen Firefighters Foundation. So, the risks and that's associated with the job over the years. I was relatively healthy, was probably a little bit overweight, like most of Americans in that are, but I worked out 5 to 6 days a week. I would ruck. I was very active. Younger, before I had kids, I played softball, then I coached baseball. Was very active and took care of myself. I have a sauna in my basement that I would do sauna treatments, and that I was working on things to kind of, I guess, knowing that it's a possibility, kind of get ahead of it and take care of myself.
Sure. Yeah. So then how did all of this start with Gallery? How did you learn about Gallery? How was it introduced to you?
Our fire chief, I believe, was at a conference and was able to hear about it, brought it back. I don't know if also there was a life insurance. Something happened with him to where I think he took the test and decided he wanted to provide it for our department. And luckily, our township was very supportive, and they found a budgetary means to do it for all of our full-time and part-time firefighters that wanted to have it done and that met the age requirement. And honestly, I saw it in an email and was laughing because it's like, okay, here's a test. Let's go take this test and we'll just check that, as been there, done that, and we'll move on. So it was just something that we saw. I didn't, typical firefighter, I did not research it. I just knew we were going to be able to have a blood draw on duty. I'm like, well, that's easy. I can walk in, they can take my blood, and we'll see what happens. So I really put no thought into it at first, but the department was ahead of the times by jumping on this and getting it for our members.
Yeah, for sure. So it was a scheduled draw event at the station. Okay.
Yeah, they scheduled a couple different days. We were able to do it on duty to make it firefighter proof. You don't even have to be fasting for the blood draw because in the fire service, we usually go for our annual physicals and we're supposed to get fasting blood draws, and we'll leave after being at work and messed up sleep schedule, messed up taking your coffee or having something to eat in the morning before you do blood work. So it makes it very easy. You can just go in at any point in time during that day and have your blood drawn.
So you did that. You went in, you
Yes.
got your blood drawn, and then what happened?
Really didn't think much about it. We knew that, notification, they had told us if you got an email, you didn't have anything to go look at. If you got a phone call, it would be different. Some of the guys at the firehouse started talking, hey, I've got an email, who's got this, who's got that. And then I received a phone call. And the lady on the other end of the phone was very apologetic. I kind of giggled and got her laughing because I'm like, hey, this isn't your fault. You didn't do this. And she was explaining what the next steps were, what I should do, getting a hold of my doctor. Um, and with some of that with my doctor, once I got the notification from Grail, they were great about following up and making sure, hey, if we need to contact your doctor because they may not know what this test is. And pretty much that's exactly what happened. My primary care doctor that had to give me a referral to go get a scope had no clue. They just kind of threw it in my file when it came in. They thought it was another, because I would always send them my results from my annual physical at the firehouse. They thought it was just something that needed filed. And once we got into them, told them what I was looking for, they had me in the office and a referral probably within 2 to 3 days.
Wow, so that's really fast. So what did your results say?
Um, Stomach, colorectal, and esophageal were the kind of the ones that I hit for, as I say. And I had just recently, the year before, just being proactive, had a colonoscopy that was clear. They're like, hey, you have no other symptoms. We're going to say that that's the test for that. We need to get not an endoscopy and get a look at your stomach and your esophagus and see what's going on there.
Okay. So you were able to get in within a few days and get that endoscopy done. And what were the findings with that?
So I went in, got my referral. I was able to go in June and get, so the spring, April-ish is when we took the test. June, I had my first scope. They weren't able to see a whole lot. I had no symptoms. I didn't have heartburn. I didn't have trouble eating. Didn't have anything like that. But my doctor, when he first came back out, he said, looks a little gnarly in there. I'm going to put you on some medicine to clear it up, and we're going to see you back in September for a second scope. And so I thought, okay, there's something down there, but he's put me on some medicine. This is going to be easy. We went back in September and it's next scope. Once again, I'm joking with him, going back in for the procedure. And then he came back out of the procedure. Tone had totally changed. Um, he started talking about staging, what the next 24 hours would mean. We'll tell you for sure. I'll call you within the next 24 hours after your biopsy to let you know what we're going. Here's what the next steps are. And that hits you pretty hard. You hear cancer bounce around the fire service. You think you're healthy. I had just got into a program here in Ohio, our drop program, to where I was going to do 5 more years in the fire service and then retire. So I was looking towards retirement and all that towards the tail end of my career, kind of the glory years and that. And then you get smacked with this, sitting in a doctor's office, not even expecting it.
Yeah, I can only imagine what a shock it was. So you received a diagnosis. It was cancer. So then tell me about your treatment.
So it was kind of well, we got to see what it staged at and do this and that. So I had to go do another scope. They did an ultrasound scope that staged it, and they staged it at a 1B. So they caught it very early. I was able to get into a high state university hospital, the Wexner Center, where Dr. Merritt, who is renowned for the surgery on this, um, was he put it, he was like, we were excited to see you because we're not used to seeing somebody this early that we can really treat, get after. We were possibly going to have to do chemo and radiation. They determined that I was early enough, it had not spread, that we were going to go straight to surgery. Um, and so November 26th, moving along really quick, I was in for an 11-hour esophagectomy that was done robotically at Ohio State. Was in the hospital, I think, for 9 days. And then on the recovery trail and everything after that, they removed the lower half of my esophagus, pulled my stomach up into my chest, so my stomach sits vertical. You no longer have the closure flap to help keep things, down in there at times and everything. So I had to learn to eat again. A long road of a lot of chicken broth, some mashed potatoes and things for a couple weeks after that, and then slowly on to ground beef. And I can now eat again and everything, but it was a lengthy process. Lost a lot of weight. I think I lost around 51 to 55 pounds during that time. So just a long, slow road to recovery with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a life-changing experience. Absolutely. I want to go back just a little bit. You mentioned your primary care, your doctors didn't know what the Galleri test was. Um, Tell me about just, your care team in general, your surgeon, your oncology, like what was their reaction to this experience, to having gotten this positive screen result to a stage 1B cancer diagnosis?
Yeah, it was interesting. Every doctor I went to through the process, and having been healthy and part of the medical field, being a paramedic for so long, taking patients, not being on this side of it, you realize that things don't really happen fast or as fast as you'd like to get information when you're jumping through the medical world. So I had to explain to my primary care doctor what the test was. If she took notes on it, researched it, it's like, oh, okay. When I went for my first scope, I had to explain to them. The next group, they asked about it. Dr. Merritt, his staff at OSU, it's a teaching hospital. So every day you're in there, his staff of surgeons and everybody's coming through that works in his office. And every one of them were making notes from day one of me going in just to meet with them of what this test was. I mean, I remember the first day, Dr. Merritt himself looked it up on the computer in the room. He was like, I need to know about this. And, he's been on, he's done some things with us, is very supportive of the program. And it was neat to see that they were so excited because there's no screening for this. They told me with the esophageal cancer when we got in there, and I guess this is what really hit home, was it has a 5% survival rate, because usually it's detected by the time you're having trouble swallowing. Your tumor's large, it's grown outside of the esophagus, it's in the center of your chest. There's so many factors that play into it that the survival rate's only 5%. And for them to find one as early as they found mine, as small as the tumor was, it hadn't grown outside of the esophagus, they could get right at it. I still never had to have any chemo and radiation. So, I mean, this really caught it early. And for me, yeah, it changes your life. It was a lengthy surgery. It could have been a lot worse.
For sure. Well, we're very, very happy that you were able to have an early detection. You're here with us today. How are you feeling?
I'm doing good. I've had to, in stubborn Irish fashion, I made it back to work February 19th. So after having surgery in November, I went back on the truck as a lieutenant, going into fires, going on car accidents, doing everything. Made it till about mid-July, and the doctors and everybody were like, "Yeah, you really shouldn't be." It was too much of a struggle to try to get the calories, eating and drinking and different things with the different effects you have of the surgery. But now that I've retired, I feel a lot better. I'm sleeping every night which is huge. That was one of the factors that was mentioned earlier about sleep deprivation and some of the things that that does to us. And I'm slowly, they've told me over the next couple of years, the eating will balance out a little bit. Um, but you just have to be careful with, things you're doing right after you eat or drink something because there's that sphincter and stuff there to try to keep things down inside. It's not there anymore.
For sure. So I want to take you back just a little bit. We had a conversation, months ago at a different event, and you shared with me a little bit of kind of your mindset when you first got your gallery result, what your kind of initial
Mhm.
response to that was. I was wondering if you might be able to share that, but then also if you have any message that you'd like to share with respect to your colleagues in fire service or even your leaders in fire service.
Yeah, for me personally, when I first got it from Gallery, I was like, okay, it says there's a chance. I remember even mentioning that to my wife. We didn't even tell our kids or anything. I was like, hey, there's a chance I could have something going on, but like I've just had a colonoscopy. I was blowing it off. Typical fire service. And at first, I was like, I'm not even going to call my doctor because up until just a few years ago, I didn't even have a primary care doctor. I was just your typical male firefighter, stubborn that if you got sick, you tough through it or whatever. And I was lucky enough to not be injured a lot and stuff to where I needed a primary care doctor. So I kind of blew that off a little bit at first. Um, and then was like, okay, probably need to do this follow up. And as things started progressing, your mindset changes with that. You look back at it and now where I'm sitting, I feel lucky that we caught it. Then, not to lie with you, yeah, I was pissed because I'm in the last few years of my career, I'd worked to where I was teaching and helping at a place in Indianapolis that is like firefighter Disneyland. That was just great to be able to go there and do things. And I was like, man, I got 5 more years of this. I can still do this stuff. I'm physically fit. I'm doing great. And that mindset that changes it drastically. Um, and I'm just so glad that I didn't blow it all. And at first, I really wanted to. With my colleagues and that, the department was 100% supportive. My family, my brothers and sisters on the department, my chiefs. And for anybody out there that is worried about taking this test for your department, everything was confidential. The only thing our department knew after all the testing was done at Violet was that they had one person that came back with some markers, that there was nothing else that they would know. So until the day that I went into their office to tell them, hey, I'm going to be off work, I do have cancer, because I waited until I actually got my diagnosis to even tell them that I had cancer and they had no idea. So the confidentiality is 100% there. And I think also just having the support of our department. So for anybody higher up, the chiefs and everything in an organization, and you truly believe in this and that, then when somebody does come into you, just be there for them. And from day one all the way through up until my retirement, I mean, they were so supportive of all the process that I had to go through for the medical part of the retirement, for getting the BWC claim that here in Ohio we have presumptive cancer. And I do have a workers' comp claim that this was cancer directly related to the job. So there was a lot of things to go through that the department wise and supporting of the test. Um, Gallery that the calling and checking on everything, making sure all the way up until I went to high state, Grail even returned some calls and just had people that were working to make sure everything was going smoothly. That if there was anything else we needed, that they were going to help with. So a lot of that all played into it. It was a roller coaster of emotions. You have all those, and then it's just all right. We need to get at this because I'm only 49 years old. That was the thing hit me too is, what am I going to do? And I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't have a whole lot of other job skills. I was really good at crawling down dirty, smoky hallways and breaking things. But we'll figure something out. And I just think, you have to go through that and it's going to be a range of emotions. But definitely don't blow off the testing because I was truly going to firefighter fashion, just throw the paper in the corner, be like, we'll see what happens. And if I would have done that, who knows where we'd be at today with either how sick I would be or if I'd even be here.
Sure. So, sounds like you are a fan of yourself and your brothers and sisters looking after their health.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to take care of yourself in this game. And my son's just starting it now. And people have asked me, they're like, hey, you got sick from the job. Do you want him doing them? Absolutely. There's nothing I would change. I would go back and do it all the same way and do it over again right now, even if I knew it ended up this way. It's a profession that it's a calling, it's a family. Um, and getting this thrown in there now, getting this out there really shows that you care about your employees and you care about your firefighters by getting them tested.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. Anything else you want to share that we didn't touch on? Um, if not, we can see if there are any
I don't
questions.
think so. I think we got it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Let's see. I am taking a look at the Q&A. I am not actually seeing anything in the Q&A. If any of the moderators are there, if there's anything that you may have seen. Um, it looks like we don't. Any of the attendees, I don't know if you can raise a hand if there's any sort of live questions we'd like to address. No, going once, going twice. Okay. Well, we are Grail. Um, you should all have a way to contact us one way or another. If you do find that you have questions, if you would like additional information, we've got a whole team that supports our firefighter groups across the country, and we would be more than happy to have a conversation with you, provide information, and see how we can help you take care of your people. So, thank you all very much for joining us, and I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you.